Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Be sure to stick around to the end for some debatably funny jokes that will hopefully leave you with a smile. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. We're here to support you, and we'd love to hear from you. So drop us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. Today, we're talking about teams, the team context of leadership, and following up from the one-to-one, where we end up having 3 podcast series, I guess, on that one. And yeah, so we've got a couple books to share that talk about teams or the leadership genius model, and we can kind of jump in and see where it goes. I think we all have a lot of team stories of team leadership, which starts to get a little more complex than just one-to-one, because now you're looking not only at your relationship with an individual and their relationship with you, but now you're having to understand the interrelationships between the people on the team.
Exactly. And groups of smaller groups within the team.
Right. Yeah.
That's why, as we talk about teams, there's a boundary to the total, how many people you can have on a team, so to speak. And in business or work teams, probably 8 to 12 people, it would be ideal. Anything over than that, over than 12, people begin to fracture into smaller groups.
There's also the distinction between teams and groups, which we've talked about before. So I think that's good that we clear that up as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Bring that up.
Yeah. So teams are, the difference between a team and a group is, with a team, you're interdependent on one another to accomplish a goal, for instance. The example I think we used was like a sales team may not be necessarily a team because they might be competing against one another for future sales and so forth. That would be more of a group. And so what we're talking about is the team dynamic, not necessarily a group dynamic.
Yeah. So they have to be interdependent. Any other sort of criteria?
Oh, yeah. Aaron was going to tell us about the other ones.
I was. Oh, Jimmy definitely knows. But
and here's Jimmy.
Man.
Well, also they have a common goal, right?
They have a common goal.
They have a common goal. They're interdependent on one another.
I think a group could have a common goal, though. Like a sales team. They're all trying to work towards a overarching sales goal, but their individual work is not necessarily dependent on others, like it would be for a functional team. Like, the logistician needs the contracts person to support.
That's because they have specializations. They have specializations within the team, and so there has to be a balance and a common sense of balance, that you do something that I don't do, but I'm depending on you to do it. So it's like the first baseman or the catcher. They have roles, but they have to be interdependent to get the whole thing, which is to win the game or the pennant or whatever you're talking about. The other thing is, I think we have to realize that there has to be a certain level of trust and caring built around the people in the group. We can't have underlying animosities and underlying jealousies and things said in the group, outside the group, that are not.
So that level of trust, is that a distinction that differs between a team and a group? Or
yes. The team people do have a sort of willingness to be vulnerable to the promises of other people in the group to get things done.
Okay. No.
But I still think a group might be more successful if they have that too. Although it's not, I guess, as important because they're not interdependent. Their success is not based on the success of others.
That's right. But the question is, how can you be you can be a part of a group but not trust it.
Sure.
But you can't be a team and not trust.
Sure. Yeah.
I like that.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah. So it seemed to me that as we start to slide into this topic, a quick review of some of the principles we've been talking about over the prior podcasts just need to be built into what we're about to say. So let me try to do that a little bit. One is that there are two more major types of behaviors. And remember, we define leadership as it's not a thing, it's not something you have, it's something you do. It's a set of behaviors, a set of skills that you bring to bear on the purposes of the outcomes you want. And so we're going to be talking about two types of behaviors, two leader behaviors that people need to talk about, need to understand. One is focusing behaviors, and one is
Oh, sorry.
Inspiring.
Inspiring.
Yes,
that's where Jimmy's looking.
Behaviors for 600.
I was thinking like I'm sorry. I was thinking
what is inspiring?
I was thinking old terminology of directive and supportive. But
yes,
right, so,
but we can use directive and supportive as a substitute for the ideas of focusing, inspiring. Specifically, focusing or directive behaviors shape the outcomes.
Right.
While inspiring, or what we call energy in the Genius book, are really designed to get at the confidence and motivation people bring to the outcomes that they're trying to do. And of course, in the same case, the focusing and inspiring behaviors can be used in teams. And so we're going to be mentioning some very what we've been calling up to now. Micro behaviors. So let's quickly, if you remember goal setting, that's micro behavior. And that's what kind of behavior? Well, it's a focusing behavior. Showing and telling how, focusing behavior. Well, those behaviors are paralleled in the team situation. And so instead of a goal setting, we call it purpose or chartering a group into the outcomes that everybody sees as the primary focus of their actions together. So we're going to be talking about the question of focusing and inspiring, not at the one-to-one level, but at the team level. And of course, those will be different. It will be different. So if we were talking in teams about a focusing behavior, it would be chartering. And let's sit down and talk about what the charter is. And charters involves the norms the group will adhere to, right. The do's and don'ts about working. And these are the fundamental problems if leaders don't have those skills and don't know what to do with them. And of course, in the one-to-one context, we were talking about diagnosis or assessing. And we were talking about looking at what we were calling the energy that people bring to the outcome singly, or the skill, or the competence, right? So we're going to be making those diagnostics available or understood in a team concept, because people don't know how to team. As a matter of fact, they know how to act as individuals to get things done, but they often don't know what can I do to enhance the behaviors in my group to make sure that my group is operating on a primary level. So let me give you an example. We know that one of the inspiring behaviors for one-to-one is listening. Mm-hmm. Well, is there a parallel to listening in teams? And the answer is yes to that.
Listening.
It's not just listening, it's gatekeeping. It's giving people a chance to say, you haven't said much, and I don't want you to say much.
Facilitating discussions and...
Yes, giving people entry into the flow of the activity that's going within the group. Because some people just sit there and don't say anything. Right. And they might have something to offer for the group. So as we start to talk about focusing and inspiring behaviors, that's going to come up today. we need to understand that they are different. They are different than in a one-to-one context. Listening means asking open-ended questions and so forth. Problem solving is an example in a group. Facilitating the problem solving of others. Facilitating the decision making of others. There are 4 or 5 ways of making decisions, and groups don't think about that much.
Right.
Yep.
So we're going to be focusing on behaviors, and we're going to be talking about that.
Yep. And conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution,
That's a big
crucial
Yeah.
one. Crucial.
You don't have to worry about that so much when you're only dealing with one person, but throw in a few.
It gets really
and all of a sudden There's
complicated.
conflict. And
Yeah.
then you can get into the whole concept of good, productive, or constructive conflict versus destructive
Yeah.
conflict.
Yeah.
Because you need conflict in a team.
You
But it
need
needs to
difference of
be-
opinion for sure, if that's
Yeah.
what you mean by that.
Yeah. There needs to be I don't know. I look at it as constructive conflict. Is there has to be disagreement and challenging each other, but in a way that's productive with psychological safety, and you almost start to get into some.
That's where that trust
culture.
comes in there too. So,
Yeah.
But
And then there's so many topics.
then there's also like DISC, right?
It's a
not just-
smorgasbord.
yeah.
It's like a buffet.
Oh, that sounds
Welcome to the buffet of leadership.
behaviors. Buffet of leadership behaviors.
Yeah.
All right.
And let's also understand the dispositions of all the individuals and how they interact with one another, as opposed to just a one-on-one context. So that makes it much more complicated.
Yeah.
So, what would you suggest we do?
I don't know. I think maybe we're already
Into it?
well into the first episode here for teams. I know we're going to need a couple, so maybe we tell a story or two, just to kind of set the stage for maybe a good team example and a bad team example.
Yeah,
I don't know if anyone's got a
So-
bad team example.
so
Those are more interesting.
Let's talk about what are some of the characteristics of a poor team, or characteristics of, or an example of a poor team. Can you
Sure.
think of a visible national national example?
want,
Don't
like,
anybody mention
political or something?
the House of Representatives?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
no, I'm kidding.
No, but you see, like a poor teaming situation, generally speaking, when you have a leader and he's getting no feedback from his people, like people don't feel like they're able to speak up and give him good feedback or express their opinion on a way forward, and then I've seen that so many times where the leader just kind of set them up to fail almost because they think they know everything, but they just don't. They're not getting the input that they really truly need to perform at a high level. But that could be a lot of times that's just trust. There's a trust issue.
I can think of some examples, but I have to go way back. I think most of the teams I've been on have been somewhat productive, or at least lucky enough to have worked together well where it didn't need as much leadership.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the phases of performance, we were, kind of further along, more mature. But in the government, we had some pretty dysfunctional teams, and you get people with conflict, and a lot of times there's minimal leadership and team leadership because, for one, a lot of people aren't trained on these skills to understand what they need to do. They don't have what I call leadership courage to be able to face those kind of conflicts head on and give people feedback or hold them, accountable or call them out, whether public or privately, on some of the stuff that they're doing. And, all it takes is one bad apple and they can kind of drag everybody else down if you're not, as the leader, not facilitating. I don't know. We had, there's just crazy stuff. You got the
So they didn't talk to each other face to face. They would say things about another person in the team behind their back, not to the in the meeting, but to other members of the team outside the meeting. Is that an example?
Yeah,
of
you
some
get
of the things
conflict.
that-
There's gossip, little cliques where these two people are talking about the other person they don't like working with. You got the crazy guy chugging, energy drinks, just spazzing out, on his own stuff, going off on his own. And a lot of that, I think, comes down also to the management aspect too, right? If the leader isn't, or if there isn't somebody also managing the process, if you don't have a good schedule or some way of tracking what people are doing, you can't, those are some I guess, directive sort of leadership things. And we talked about the difference between leadership and management, I think, a little bit back in the beginning podcast.
Yeah.
But when you start talking team, I think you get into some of that stuff where you need the schedule, the charter, right? Define it, charter it, scope it, have the objectives. You need some type of plan or schedule. It doesn't need to be crazy detailed or complicated. But yeah, I've seen where things just go off the rails, and then it's stressful, and people are going home, wishing they were somewhere else, thinking the grass is greener. And Jimmy and I like to say the grass is greener where you water it. So if you're crazy in one team, probably just going to be the same way somewhere else. You got to figure out and adjust your own behaviors.
And there's poor leadership behaviors where it's something bad. Usually you can really get a good idea when something bad happens. How do they respond to it? Is that leader or members of the team pointing fingers? Are they blaming others for what happened as opposed to trying to learn from the mistake that occurred and just getting better? Are they so fixated on the outcome and not so much on the process to get there? Those are always good indicators of a poor functioning team versus a well-oiled machine. So I see it all the time, and it doesn't even have to be in work. You can see it on youth sports. You can even see it with parenting. So I like to evaluate teams based on how do they respond to adversity? How do they respond to something that just didn't go right? And what type of culture is that? Do you feel, is it safe to fail, right? That's a kind of another big, buzzword or buzz phrase that's been going around. How do you create an environment where it's safe to fail so you can learn from your mistakes and just get better? So it's the leaders that I worry about that are very egocentric and kind of just.
One of the things I think happens is the leader does not feel or any responsibility for stepping away from leadership and allowing people to assert themselves as a leader within a group. And so they often try to interject, stop certain forms of communication or certain habits that people have that block them from asserting their own ideas into the group, which would be fertile and helpful to the group expanding or understanding the problem that they have.
Right.
So if you're looking for leaders that are good leaders in teams, somewhere in the team, somebody's letting go of control and facilitating someone else taking that control. So, an example would be for me, if you've ever watched the Boston Celtics in the early days, Red Auerbach would stop and say, "Okay, anybody got any ideas? Anybody? Okay, what do we go? How do we go from here?" Watch Kerr for the Warriors as a coach, same thing, and so's Popovich for the San Antonio Spurs. So those examples come out of sports, but they're right around us. People passing the right of talking and directing and shaping the ideas of the group constantly.
Right. So like in a meeting, in a company meeting, I think that behavior looks like where you have the leader constantly cutting people off. And that's what I think that you see that where someone's trying to express an idea or express a task or whatnot, and then they get cut off. They never are able to finish their sentence. And then what's even worse than that sometimes is when the leader says, "Well, I really want to hear what you have to say, Aaron. Like, tell me what you think." And then Aaron...
And they don't listen.
Right. And then Aaron says what he has to say and it makes really good, valid points. And he said, "Well, yeah, I hear you, but..." And then they just totally disregard everything you said and move on to the... So, and now, just because you give up the floor for someone, are you really listening to what they have to say? Are you really validating what they've said and taking it into
valuing,
yes,
valuing what they...
And so over time, you're gonna get it. You're gonna pick up on that. I just want to pretend like I'm giving you an opportunity to speak, but I really don't.
I think that comes into, really what we're talking about is different directive and supportive or focusing and inspiring behaviors at a team context. And I think that comes back to one of the things that they talk about in situational leadership training very, very strongly is that there is no none on either. It's low or
Right.
high, right? On a continuum. And so there's these, like not interrupting somebody is, I don't know if that's supportive or directive, but that's just a standard. Like you shouldn't do that. That's a minimum type of support that you should provide. But those kind of soliciting feedback and asking what other people think, I think the more you do that is the more mature the team is, and the more they're competent as a team together, not just their individual competencies or expertise levels, but working as a team, the more competent they are. That's when you start to, ask and facilitate more. But there's still that minimum amount where you always have to hear people's thoughts and make sure that they feel heard and have their say.
Along with the idea of passing the baton for airtime, because teams have a minimum or a maximum of airtime. I'm going to meet for 2 hours. Sure. One person can't do all that talking for 2 hours, and that shouldn't be happening.
I still have my talking stick that I got from my 7 Habits class.
Did you really? Yeah. And you pass that on to someone else?
That idea with, if you're not holding, you see that even in movies and stuff. It's like, all right, we're going to have the silencer sticker. You can only talk if you're holding this.
Well, so as we start to tug at what is positive team behavior versus negative, I think most people can get a sense of what's negative. I used to go into team meetings with executives, and they go, "Oh God, we have another test. This is going to. How long are we going to have to be there for that?" And there's an affect that says.
Well, if people don't see the meaning and the purpose behind why they're meeting and why they're putting their time, and they don't see the value, and that comes down to trust and relationships and organization. If you're not directing the meeting enough, and it's a new team and they're storming, they're going to need more facilitation. People are coming in. This is a mess. I don't want to be part of this.
I think people really need. I'm
going to go do my real job.
When it comes to meetings, people need structure. As much as a preschooler needs structure in a preschool classroom.
To a certain extent, though, but if they're very mature and they're working together, and they're very competent in how they work, then they have their goal, that may not need as much facilitating. But I think some of the teams that we've worked on, in our work, they probably are. Where
you get the leader just start talking, and it's like this, just diarrhea of the mouth. And it doesn't stop, and no one feels comfortable enough to say, "Hey, we only got 5 more minutes left in this meeting." And then what happens? It goes overtime, and then now you're saying you don't really value their time because you just either you start late or you start early.
That's really lack of any type of leadership. That's not 100%. Directive or supportive. That's just
I'm saying how it gets spiraled.
Right. But people quickly. Do that all the time, and that's not leading anymore. No. Now you're just blabbing your mouth off, right? And not focusing and staying on your objectives or.
Speaking of which, let's get back to our objectives.
I think we are. We're not talking about. I had a guy. I'll tell you a story. I just thought of. I had a guy in one of my teams who would put on his sunglasses and he'd sit back. He'd scoot his chair back against the wall so that he could lean his head back on the wall, and he'd wear sunglasses in my freaking meeting inside a conference room,
so that he could.
Yeah, so he could close. I knew he was closing that, and I was very early in my career, and my neat innovative thought, because my leadership wasn't doing anything about it, like, he's just kind of a grumpy guy, and just deal with it. Like, no, like we're not. It's destructive to our meeting progress. Like, if it was just not bothering anything, I'd leave it alone, but it was bugging me, and it was distracting others. So I went to him. I said, "Hey, you can't wear sunglasses in the meeting." I talked to him aside, and he's like, "Well, no, there's a glare on the screen. I have to wear it. It's a medical thing. It hurts my eyes." So I came up with this idea, and so I came back to him. I was like, "All right, well, I've got budget, so I need you to go pick out a new whiteboard or whatever projection screen that's not glare. It's glare free, so that you can take off your sunglasses in my meeting if that's what it has to be." And of course, he never
did the work.
He never did the work. So it didn't. It was a bad idea.
So he kept wearing.
But I was really excited about it. I thought, this is very innovative. I'll get him engaged by.
He kept wearing them.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
It was hard to get him. I mean, at some point we did the typical government thing, and we found him another job in another code.
Got it.
And we got him to leave. Promoting out is what they call it. So But yeah, those kind of things. Early in my career, I didn't have enough. And I was also a younger guy. I was in my 20s. He was probably in his, 50s, late 50s, maybe even in his early 60s. And so there was this age differential and there was this lack of respect. But I also wasn't, presenting myself as probably a confident, strong leader at the time, because I wasn't really. I was pretty new to it and kind of figuring myself out too. So it was a tough team facilitation thing to try to handle those.
Let's talk a little bit about moving towards what a good high-performing team does. And we've talked about some of the ills. I think one of the major problems that groups get is they don't form right. They don't get formed right.
Before we jump into this, why don't we, because we're at almost 25 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we tell a joke? Keep it light. If you have one. I could tell can I do the pie one?
Oh, well, yeah, please.
Okay. And then what were we going to talk about? You want to talk into the positive side?
What I'd like to do is to start to talk about how to begin to form a really high-performing team.
Okay. So we can jump into that on the next episode.
Okay.
All right. So you ready?
Oh,
here
for the joke. Here it comes.
Okay, so a guy goes to the doctor. And the doctor brings him into the exam room and he says, "Doctor, you got to help me. I've got a pie stuck up my bum." Mm. And have you heard it? Oh, okay, good.
I'm just trying to figure out how you get a pie stuck up your bum.
I don't know. It was crazy. The guy's freaking out. And he's like, "Doc, you got to help me. You got to help me figure this out." And Doc, all right, calm down. Drop your pants. Let's take a look. So he drops his pants. He's turn around. And the doctor, kneels down, kind of looks in there. And he's like, "Well, holy heck, you sure do. You have a pie up your bum." And then the doctor says, "But don't worry, I've got cream for that." No. Come on! Where's my sound effects?
Wah.
I'm still trying to figure.
No, just let it go. The image. Can you see what my reaction was? Really? That's a joke?
That's a good joke. I thought it was good. I thought it was funny.
Well, the only one I know is you hear about the new squirrel diet. It's just nuts.
So when you said light, you wanted a light joke. I thought you were going to tell the hippo and the zippo.
Oh yeah, you know what do they call a three-legged hippo?
I don't know.
A hoppo.
Yeah, that was good. the zippo.
Is it okay? Well, there is
the difference between a hippo and a lighter
and a zipper.
And a zippo.
A zipper.
Zippo.
A zippo.
It's a little lighter.
Just a little lighter.
There, that's the one I thought you were going for.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the pie joke. Sorry.
You like the cream or the pie? I mean, I just don't know where to go with this.
Whipped cream. But cream like a...
So I was telling Dre though, I did get my son Cooper, he's 10 going on 11, and for Christmas I got him a calendar of dad jokes. So every day he comes down to dinner and tells a dad joke.
Is it like a notepad thing?
Yeah,
like
that's exactly
the
what it
old
is.
Yep.
Dilbert jokes. Or
Yep. So he's coming down every night with a new joke.
Right.
So their dad jokes are fun.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna try this one on Aaron. It didn't work too well on.
No, wait
Dre.
for the next one. Oh. Save it for next week.
Okay. I thought we were just gonna roll. Okay. I'll wait for next week. All right.
All right, good. Well, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you back to keep talking about teams and how to get a high-performing team.
Yeah.
All right. Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time.